You'll always be broke, Alyssa. You know that, right? That's what Brandon said as he packed his overnight bag, not even giving me the decency of looking me in the eye. I stood there in our tiny one-bedroom apartment, barefoot on the cold laminate floor, holding the pitch deck I'd spent 3 weeks perfecting. It was 2:08 a.m. I remember because I checked the time, thinking, maybe if I woke up earlier that day, maybe if I didn't ask him to read it now, maybe this would have gone differently. But nothing I did was ever enough for him. He slung his duffel bag over his shoulder like he was carrying a war trophy, not 6 years of our shared life. You've been chasing the same dead dream since college, he continued, voice flat. It's cute, but I'm done playing house with a girl who can't grow up. And just like that, he left. No fight, no tears. Just slammed the door behind him like I was a roommate he outgrew. I didn't run after him. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I just sat down on the edge of our faux leather couch, the one we got off Facebook Marketplace, and stared at the dent in the wall behind the door from when he kicked it open 2 winters ago during fight. I don't remember what that fight was about. I remember the dent, though, and the silence afterward. That night, the silence was different. It was the kind that settles deep in your lungs, not just in the room. It presses on your ribs and makes you question if you were ever truly breathing when they were around. I wanted to cry. I knew I should. That's what people do when their boyfriend of 6 years walks out with a final gut punch of a line. But I didn't. I walked over to my tiny desk, the one shoved between our bookshelf and the heater that only worked when it wanted to, and sat down in front of my laptop. The screen still showed my presentation slides. Seed round pitch, Phoenix Connect. Brandon never even looked at it. I stared at the first slide, a logo I designed on Canva, a tagline I rewrote 100 times, helping small creators find their global tribe. That dream, that dead dream as he called it, was the only thing I had that made me feel like I was more than just invisible. And now, even that felt like a joke. I shut the laptop and leaned back. My eyes scanned the apartment, landing on his framed MBA diploma, still on the wall, even though I'd begged him to take it to his office. He never did. I like it here. It reminds me of who's investing in our future, he'd once said, with a smirk that didn't reach his eyes. He always thought he was the smart one, the provider, the one with the plan. And I was, what? The girl who made pretty mood boards? The one who dropped out of a marketing degree because her mom got sick? The one who dared to dream big without a backup plan? Maybe he was right. I got up to pour myself a glass of water, my hands shaking so badly I dropped the glass in the sink. The clatter echoed like thunder in the still apartment. I was alone, and for the first time, I wasn't scared. I wasn't sad. I was something else, something I hadn't felt in years. Empty, but free. Brandon didn't just leave me that night. He left behind his doubt, his belittling comments, his passive-aggressive jokes about how I'd never make rent without him. And unknowingly, he gave me something I hadn't had in a long time. A reason. A reason to prove him wrong. That was the night everything changed. Not because I lost him, but because I found the silence. And in that silence, I found something louder than any voice in my life had ever been.
Mine.
My name is Alyssa Morgan, and if there's one thing I've always been good at, it's making other people feel comfortable, even when I'm falling apart. I think it started when I was a kid. My mom used to say I was born with an old soul. But really, I was just a quiet kid in a loud house. The kind who noticed everything, especially the things that went unsaid. My older brother, Caleb, was the golden child. The firstborn, the football captain, the scholarship student. He could do no wrong. Literally. He once crashed my mom's car into a mailbox, and somehow I got grounded because I should have reminded him there was black ice. That's the kind of house I grew up in. My dad left when I was 8. I remember the night. My mom was holding a bowl of mashed potatoes when he said, "I can't do this anymore." She dropped the bowl, and it shattered all over the kitchen tile. I didn't cry then either. I just got a broom and started sweeping. That kind of reaction became a pattern in my life. Hold it in. Clean it up. Smile through it. My mom tried, but after Dad left, something inside her dimmed. She worked 2 jobs, diner waitress by day, janitor by night. And even when she was home, she wasn't really there. She'd sit at the kitchen table, smoking half a cigarette and staring into space. Caleb got her attention. He needed rides to practice, help with his resume, money for prom. I learned early not to ask for much. When I brought home a second-place ribbon in the state art fair, she said, "That's nice, honey," and went back to folding laundry. I learned that love, in our house, was conditional. And attention? That was a luxury you earned by being impressive. So, I tried. I became the helper. I made dinner, I babysat my cousin's kids, I took care of my mom when she came home with aching feet. But no one really noticed, not in a way that stuck. By the time I was 16, I'd learned the art of blending in. I could shapeshift into whatever people needed. The good daughter, the quiet friend, the girlfriend who didn't ask too many questions. Then I met Brandon. I was 19. He was 24. Confident. Ambitious. Handsome in a buttoned-up, arrogant kind of way. He wore pressed collars and expensive shoes. He said things like scalability and exit strategy before I even knew what those meant. And when he looked at me, he made me feel like I wasn't invisible. At least at first. He said I was different. Said I had potential. He liked that I wasn't like the other girls he dated. "You're quiet, but smart," he once told me, like it was a rare compliment. "I bet you're a good listener." I was. But not in the way he meant. I listened to the way he talked about people. About the girl at work who wore too much perfume, the waiter who couldn't speak proper English, the guy at the gas station who looked like he hadn't bathed. At first, I brushed it off. Everyone has bad moments, right? But those moments stacked up. And so did the times he dismissed my dreams. When I told him I wanted to start my own platform for indie creators, a kind of community meets marketplace for underrepresented voices, he smiled in that tight-lipped way and said, "Babe, that's cute. But you know most startups fail, right?" Still, I tried. I sketched logos during my lunch breaks. I watched YouTube tutorials on UX design. I took online courses at night. I built wireframes in Canva and pitched the idea to friends who didn't really understand it, but at least they smiled. Brandon never smiled about it. He tolerated it, like a hobby he hoped I'd grow out of. And I tolerated him. For years. Because it was familiar. Because I thought maybe if I just worked harder, if I just became more helpful, more agreeable, more successful, he'd finally see me. The way I always wanted to be seen. But the truth is, I was dating a mirror of my childhood. A man who only gave affection when I was useful. Who only paid attention when I stayed small. Looking back, there were so many signs. Like how he made fun of the fact that I'd never finished college. "You're smart, but you're not degree smart," he once laughed, not knowing I'd dropped out to care for my mom during her 3rd surgery. Or how he always paid for dinner, but reminded me of it later. Or how he'd take phone calls during our dates, eyes glued to his screen while I sat across from him pretending I wasn't shrinking inside. But the worst part wasn't the disrespect. It was how normal it all felt. Because when you grow up in a house where your needs come last, you start to believe that's just the way life is. That you should be grateful for scraps. That your job is to give, not receive. To support, not be supported. To dream quietly, if at all. So I stayed. Even when I knew better. Even when I'd lie awake at night imagining a life that didn't involve tiptoeing around someone else's ego. My friends would ask why I was still with him. "He's not that bad," I'd say. "He's just under pressure. He's helping me learn the business world." But the truth is, I was scared. Not of being alone. I'd been alone most of my life. I was scared that maybe he was right. Maybe I would always be broke. Maybe I wasn't as smart or driven or worthy as I wanted to believe. Because when someone tells you you're small for long enough, you start to believe it. Until something or someone breaks that illusion. But that would come later. Right now, in the timeline of this story, I was still in the cage. Still in the cycle. Still hoping that one day he'd look at me and say, "You were right all along." Instead, he said, "You'll always be broke." And that sentence, cruel, condescending, final, was the spark that finally lit the fire I didn't know I had inside me. It hurt. God, it hurt more than I wanted to admit. But it was also the beginning. Because from that moment on, I stopped trying to prove myself to him and started building something for me. The week after Brandon left, everything was quiet, uncomfortably quiet. No texts, no calls, not even a passive-aggressive, hope you're doing well message. The silence was supposed to feel peaceful. Instead, it felt like a punishment. I kept thinking he'd come back, that he'd at least want to talk, offer closure, maybe even realize how cruel he'd been. I replayed his words over and over. You'll always be broke. People like you just don't make it. Like a mantra, those words lodged themselves in the back of my throat. On the 5th day, I broke and sent him a message. Hey, just wanted to say I hope you're okay. If you ever want to talk, I'm here. I waited. Read the message 10 times. No response. I checked his Instagram an hour later. He'd posted a photo of himself at a rooftop bar, arm around some new girl. She looked younger, sharper, maybe more Forbes material, whatever that meant to him. I stared at the screen, heat rising to my cheeks, not because he'd moved on, but because he never even looked back. That's when it hit me. He hadn't left in anger. He'd left in certainty. Certain that I'd never be anything. That his absence would destroy me. That his words would be prophecy. The next rejection came in the form of an email. Subject: Phoenix Connect, seed round declined. It was from one of the only angel investors I'd pitched to directly. While we found your vision compelling, we believe the concept lacks scalability in its current form. We wish you luck in your future endeavors. Scalability. That word again. I stared at my laptop, my stomach sinking. I'd already been ghosted by 4 others. This one just had the decency to say it out loud. It was like they could smell the desperation on my pitch deck. Like they knew I didn't come from Stanford or have a co-founder with VC connections. Like they knew I was just a girl with a cheap laptop, a cluttered apartment, and a shaky dream. The final straw came later that week, when I called my mom to check in. We hadn't spoken much since the breakup. She'd always liked Brandon. Mostly because he was stable and wore nice shoes. She didn't say much when I told her we ended things. Just sighed and said, well, maybe it's for the best. But during that call, I needed something else. Comfort, maybe. Reassurance. Or just a reminder that I wasn't crazy for wanting more than a life built around someone else. Instead, she said this. Maybe you should just get a real job now. Something with benefits. You've always been good at organizing things. Maybe an assistant role? You could work your way up. She meant well. But her words hit like a slap. A real job. As if what I'd been building was pretend. As if the hours, the plans, the unpaid grind, none of it counted because it didn't come with a 401k or a title. I didn't argue. I didn't defend myself. I just nodded, even though she couldn't see me. I hung up and stared at the wall, the silence buzzing louder than ever. In the span of 7 days, I'd been dumped by someone who said he loved me, rejected by the people I was begging to believe in my dream, dismissed by the one person I thought might still understand. And through it all, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't throw anything or drink too much wine or send angry texts. I just stopped. Stopped explaining. Stopped asking. Stopped hoping anyone would show up for me because deep down I realized they never really had. That was the shift. Not loud, not dramatic, just a quiet click in my chest. Something turned off. Or maybe something turned on. Because after that week, I didn't feel like proving anything to anyone. Not to Brandon. Not to my mom. Not to some investor in a glass building in New York. I decided for the first time in my life that I wasn't building for them anymore. I was building because I had to. Not for revenge. Not for applause. But because if I didn't, I'd disappear. And I was done being invisible. There was no dramatic announcement. No, I'm cutting people off post. No email blast saying I'd changed. Just silence. It started small. I stopped replying to texts I didn't feel like answering. The hey, just checking in messages from people who only reached out when they needed something, I left them on read. Brandon's number? I deleted it. I even blocked him on Instagram. Not out of anger, but out of necessity. Seeing him smile in rooftop bars while I was rebuilding from ash? No thanks. Then came my bank app. Every month since I was 23, I'd been sending money to my mom, not because she asked, but because I knew she was struggling. Even when I was short, I found a way. But that month, I didn't. I stared at the send $300 reminder I'd set years ago, and I deleted it. Not because I stopped loving her, but because I was done trying to earn her approval through sacrifice. That $300? It went to a new laptop. Refurbished, scratched on the side, but it worked better than the hand-me-down one I'd been clinging to since college. I called it my no-budget startup kit. I unsubscribed from newsletters, deleted every podcast that preached hustle but never talked about healing. I turned inward, and it was terrifying. The apartment was still small, the fridge still half full. My fingers still trembled every time I logged in to check if any investor had replied. But somehow, the silence no longer felt like abandonment. It felt like space. Space to hear myself again. I stopped trying to network. Instead, I built. I opened my laptop at 6 a.m. and coded until my back ached. I redesigned the platform's onboarding flow 3 times in a week. I sent updates to the 3 users I still had, pretending they were 300. I became obsessed, not with success, but with clarity. One night, while sketching out user personas on sticky notes, I had a thought. What if I don't need to scale? What if I just need to solve something real? That changed everything. I narrowed the product's focus to one clear use case. Stripped out everything flashy. Started writing blogs and tutorials, not to attract investors, but to help people who were struggling like I had. And slowly, it started working. A stranger commented, "This helped me more than anything I've tried this year." Then another shared it. Then a small local org reached out and asked if they could pilot my product. I didn't scream. I didn't post about it. I just sat there, heart pounding, and whispered to myself, "You're not broke. You're just not bought yet." Every day, I chose myself. I made coffee, lit a cheap candle, opened my laptop, and worked like the world had already said yes. Because in that silence, that withdrawal from every fake friend, dismissive parent, and doubting ex, I'd found something louder than applause. Self-trust. I didn't need to prove my worth to anyone anymore. And that, I realized, was power. It was a rainy Thursday when the email came. The subject line said, "You probably don't remember me, but I remember you." At first, I thought it was spam. I almost deleted it without opening. But something made me pause. It was from a woman named Kendra Shaw. The name rang a faint bell, but I couldn't place it. I clicked it open. "Hi, Eliza. I came across your name while researching small platforms focused on emotional recovery and trauma healing. And I couldn't believe it, it's you. I don't know if you remember, but 4 years ago, you sat with my daughter in the ER after her panic attack. I was running late from work. You held her hand, gave her your hoodie, and talked her through her breathing until I got there. You told her she wasn't broken, just overloaded. She still talks about that moment. She's in grad school now. Wants to become a counselor. Because of you. Anyway, I found her platform. It's brilliant. I shared it with a few folks in my clinic. I think there's serious potential here. Just wanted to say, people remember the quiet things. The invisible kindness. The way you made her feel. And I see you. Let me know if you'd ever want to talk partnerships or beta testing. If not, that's okay too. I'm just grateful." I read the message 3 times, eyes blurring. I did remember her daughter, barely. It had been one of those nights where everything blurred. The buzzing ER lights, the shuffled forms, the sobs echoing from curtained beds. I wasn't even working that night. I was just there for my own appointment. But I'd seen a teenage girl shaking, alone, and I couldn't walk past her. I'd forgotten that moment. But she hadn't. And now, years later, the kindness I had nearly forgotten came circling back. That night, I sat in bed, laptop open, staring at Kendra's name in my inbox. Not an investor. Not a tech bro. Not someone looking for numbers or forecasts or flashy decks. Just a human. One who saw me before anyone else did. A few days later, she posted on LinkedIn about my platform. I don't usually post endorsements, but I need to shout out a project that deserves attention. Built by someone who doesn't just understand mental health, she's lived it. She helped my daughter once. Now she's helping hundreds. That post? It blew up. Therapists, coaches, trauma workers, they all started commenting, liking, sharing. People began signing up. Real people. Not VC buzzwords or users. Humans. Strangers messaged me things like, "This app feels like a friend. Thank you for making something soft in a hard world. I don't feel alone anymore." And here's the twist I never saw coming. Brandon's ex-colleague, one I barely remembered meeting at his birthday dinner, messaged me too.
Hey.
Random question. Are you the Eliza who used to date Brandon Stone? Because if so, I think you're the one he used to talk down to at parties. I just saw your name on Forbes 30 under 30. I froze. She sent a screenshot. I was there, tiny headshot, blurry bio. I hadn't even known the article went live yet. It was one of those quiet inclusions. Founders to watch, buried in a list of others. But it was real. And now, people who once saw me as Brandon's girl were seeing me as me. No preface. No apology. Just Eliza Green. Founder, writer, builder. The girl who'd once been told she'd always be broke? She was now on a list with CEOs and PhDs, and she got there by holding someone's hand in an ER and building a platform from the softest part of her soul. Funny how the world works. The same people who dismissed me for being too emotional were now quoting my blog posts. The same ones who said I needed business polish were sharing my raw, vulnerable stories like gospel. But I didn't care about the irony. I just sat there, heart wide open, breathing deep for the first time in years. Because someone finally saw the truth. And this time, I didn't have to prove it. It started with a text from my sister. "Wow, Forbes? That's huge. We should talk soon." I stared at the screen. We hadn't spoken in nearly a year. Not since she said, "I mean, you're smart, Eliza, but let's be real, you've never been business-minded." Not since the family group chat roasted me for overreacting when Brandon left. Not since they stopped inviting me to birthdays, dinners, game nights, because, in their words, we don't want the energy to be weird.
But now?
Now that my name was circulating on social media and I was being featured on podcasts, now they remembered me.
I didn't respond.
An hour later, a group text came in from my mom. "Hey girls, wouldn't it be lovely to do a Sunday brunch? Get the family back together, like old times." I didn't even have to guess who she meant. The message wasn't for all her daughters. It was for one me, the invisible one. The one who, until recently, only existed in their lives when they needed something. I waited. Didn't reply. 2 days later, I got a voicemail from my aunt, the one who always sided with Brandon. "Hey sweetheart, I saw the article. You're really doing amazing. Look, we all say things we don't mean sometimes. I know things got tense, but life's too short to hold grudges. Let's just move forward, yeah? We're proud of you."
Proud.
The word clung to me like perfume sprayed on someone who hadn't showered in weeks. Artificial. Unbelievable. Where was that pride when I was folding laundry at her place because I couldn't afford detergent? When I showed up for every baby shower, birthday, and potluck, even when I was exhausted and broke? Where was it when I was on my bathroom floor, sobbing into a towel so the neighbors wouldn't hear? I played the voicemail 3 times. Not because I was tempted, but because I wanted to feel nothing. And I did. For the first time in my life, I wasn't aching for them to mean it. I knew they didn't. Because none of them asked, "How are you really? Are you okay?" What was it like, building all this from scratch?
No.
They just wanted me back now that I had value. Brandon even texted me. "Brandon, saw your Forbes feature. Glad you're doing well. No hard feelings, I hope. You always had potential. Guess I just didn't see it at the time." I read it while sitting in a sunlit cafe, sipping iced coffee. I smiled. Not because I was flattered, but because it was so perfectly predictable. People don't reach out because they've changed. They reach out because you have. They feel the distance. They see the glow. And they want to claim a piece of it, even if they buried you when you were dim. The final message came from my mother 3 weeks after the Forbes article dropped. Sweetheart, people keep asking about you. Can you send me a photo and a few lines about your company? I want to include it in the church newsletter. That was it. No, I'm sorry. No, you must have worked so hard. No, I realize now how wrong we were. Just a PR move. A headline to brag about. Look what my daughter did. The one I almost erased. I closed the message.
Took a deep breath.
And then, I deleted the thread. Not out of spite, but because I'd finally learned. Some people will only love the version of you that makes them look good. And that's not love at all. The message came late at night. I was wrapping up emails, sipping tea, the city outside my window glowing like a memory. It had been a good day, quiet, productive, no noise from the past. And then my phone buzzed. Kendra again. But this time, it wasn't about a partnership or platform feedback. It was a video message. I hesitated, then tapped play. The screen lit up with the soft face of a young woman, brown curls, nervous smile, eyes that flickered with vulnerability. She spoke. Hi, Eliza. I hope it's okay that I'm doing this. My mom gave me your email. I've wanted to say this for a long time, but I didn't know how. I leaned forward instinctively, heart tightening. You don't know this, but that night in the ER, I had decided I was done. Done trying, done pretending I was okay, done being. And then there you were, a stranger in an oversized hoodie with soft eyes who didn't ask what I did wrong. You just sat
And breathed with me.
and told me my brain wasn't broken, just tired. Tears welled up, uninvited. She continued. That moment rewired something in me. You saved me, Eliza. Not with a grand gesture, with your presence. I'm in grad school now. I'm going to be a therapist. Because of you. Because if you hadn't been there that night, I don't know if I'd be here at all. I know people probably say thank you to you all the time now. But I needed you to know that my life, my actual life, exists because of one small act of kindness you probably forgot. You're not just someone who got featured in Forbes or built an app. You're the kind of person who made a terrified teenage girl feel like maybe being alive was okay. Thank you for everything. The video ended. I sat frozen, phone still in hand, air thick, heart too full to beat properly. It wasn't about the recognition, or the visibility, or the thousands of users. It was her. One life. One real, breathing, surviving person who saw me. Not what I built. Not what I earned.
Me.
I thought back to every moment I doubted myself. Every time Brandon said, "No one's going to pay for your emotions, Eliza." Every time my sister rolled her eyes when I spoke about my dreams. Every time my mother said, "You've always been too sensitive for this world." And yet here I was. A little too sensitive, yes, but also strong, steady, soft in the places that mattered most. And I had made a difference. I replied to the video with only one sentence. Thank you, your message reminded me who I am. The next morning I went for a walk in the park. No headphones. No distractions. Just the sun rising slowly, the grass still wet, and people passing by in quiet rhythm. I passed a bench, and for some reason I sat down. The air smelled like cinnamon from a nearby bakery. Children were laughing in the distance. And suddenly it hit me. This was the life I had wanted.
Not fame.
Not wealth. Not followers.
Peace.
A name that meant something kind. A story that didn't have to be shouted. A self that didn't have to prove anything anymore. It was a Sunday morning when they showed up. I had just finished watering the plants on my balcony, hair still damp from a shower, jazz playing faintly in the background. I felt calm, unbothered. And then the buzzer rang. I looked through the peephole first. It was my mother. And behind her, my sister. No warning. No text. Just there. I didn't move for a few seconds. I just stared. Then slowly I opened the door. They were both standing awkwardly, smiles practiced, shoulders too high. Hi, Mom said softly. We were just in the neighborhood. It was a 3-hour drive. They were not in the neighborhood.
My sister chimed in.
We wanted to talk. In person. It felt important. I nodded once.
Come.
I didn't invite them in. They shuffled nervously, glancing at each other like they had rehearsed this and weren't sure whose line came next. We've been talking, Mom began, and we just feel like things got miscommunicated. I waited. You know, it wasn't that we didn't believe in you, she continued. We just didn't want you to get hurt chasing something unrealistic. But we were wrong, my sister added quickly. You're clearly doing amazing. We just want to be part of your life again. The silence after those words was loud. I felt the breeze behind me from the open door, the scent of lemon from the candle I had lit in the kitchen. My own heartbeat, steady, unrushed. For years, I would have crumbled for this moment. I would have stepped aside, let them in, pushed everything I felt deep down and said, of course, I missed you too. But today I saw it for what it was.
They weren't here for me.
They were here for access. To say, look how close we are. To rewrite the past without doing the work. To avoid sitting in the discomfort of their choices. And I was no longer available for that kind of love. I looked at them, full-bodied and clear-eyed, and spoke gently. I appreciate you coming here. I really do. But I'm not in a place where reconnecting feels right. My mother's eyes flickered, not with understanding, but confusion. My sister tilted her head. So, that's it. I nodded. For now, yes. No yelling. No slammed doors. No dramatics. Just truth. Calm, clean truth. They stood there for another few seconds, waiting for something that wasn't coming. And then, slowly, they turned and walked away. I closed the door, locked it, leaned back against it for a breath. But there were no tears. Just a quiet kind of power. The kind that says, I still care. I'm just done being careless with myself. Later that evening, I got a final message from my mom. I hope someday you'll come back around. We'll be here. I didn't reply. Not out of cruelty, but because I didn't need to anymore. Silence, in this case, was not punishment. It was peace. If you're still here listening, thank you. Maybe you've been through something like this. Maybe you've been underestimated, overlooked, or told that your dreams were foolish. Maybe you've had someone you loved speak to you in a voice that made you feel small. I know what that silence feels like, the one that comes after they say, you'll never make it. Or, who do you think you are? I've carried that silence like a second skin. For years, I tried to prove them wrong, thinking maybe success would make them apologize. That if I built enough, earned enough, smiled enough, they'd finally see me. But here's what I've learned. Sometimes they don't come around. Sometimes they only come when it benefits them. And that's okay. Because this story, this life,
It was never about them.
it was about remembering myself. Reclaiming the girl who once whispered dreams into her pillow. Rebuilding a sense of worth that didn't rise and fall based on who clapped for me. You don't need the whole world to believe in you. You just need one voice, yours. Let them say you're too much. Let them roll their eyes at your passion, your softness, your fire. Let them leave. And then watch what happens when you stay. Stay committed. Stay rooted. Stay kind. Even when it's quiet. Even when it hurts. Because your worth isn't built on their permission. It's built in the quiet mornings you keep going. In the nights you refuse to shrink. In the work you do, even when no one's watching. And if no one has told you this today, you are not too much. You are just too real for people who pretend. You are not behind. You are building slowly and beautifully. And you do not owe anyone access to your peace. If someone left you, betrayed you, or dismissed you, let them. But don't let it harden you. Don't let it make you bitter. Let it make you better. More discerning. More honest. More connected to yourself than ever before. And if they try to come back only after your shine is visible, smile. And let your silence speak the truth. I didn't win because of you. I healed in spite of you. And that, my friend, is power. You're already enough. You always have been. Thank you for witnessing my story. Now go live yours, unapologetically.